Welcome to Speaking of Spirituality, a podcast to share about the path of spiritual awakening. I'm your host, Amelia McLean, and I am so excited to be showcasing some inspiring stories and exploring some interesting topics, all under the umbrella of spirituality. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So I'm going to tell my own story of my spiritual awakening journey. And I definitely had one point in my life that when I look back on that period, I recognize it as that was my spiritual awakening for sure. But I'm going to start by just going back through my life since I was a child, because I also feel like my whole life has been a spiritual journey. And I say that because I was exposed to yoga and meditation as a young child. When I was about 5 years old, my dad started doing yoga and meditating himself. So he started to talk to me about those things. And I remember he would say things like, if I'd ask him what time it was, he'd say, well, time doesn't really exist. And that was all way over my head at that age. Obviously, I think I was maybe 7 or 8 when he first said that. I was like, what are you talking about? But it was planting a seed. And then in the future, I understood what he meant by that. And so, yeah, my parents were divorced when I was 2, so I don't ever remember them being together. And I was with each of them equal time, with my dad a few nights a week and my mom 4 nights a week most of the time as a young child. And that changed when I got older into my teenage years. But both of my parents didn't raise me under any certain religious beliefs. I would say they're both more spiritual people than religious. My mom, however, did grow up going to church and doing Bible study and all that when she was in high school. My dad didn't have any sense of religion or spirituality even in his family at all. And so my mom was also into holistic medicine when I was, I think she got into that when I was in middle school, maybe late elementary school. Anyway, that was also really influential on me and my view of the medicine world and Western medicine versus Eastern medicine. My mom's story is interesting because she began in Western medicine as a cardiovascular technician, and then she actually moved out of Western medicine to go into more holistic medicine. She went to massage school and then was actually doing colon hydrotherapy for a while, and that was all really interesting to me. And then she went back into the Western medicine later on. So, but yeah, being exposed to holistic ways was really influential for me, and that's how I live my life now. I'm definitely not a doctor person. I honestly don't remember the last time I went to the doctor. And so yeah, my dad growing up, he exposed me to yoga and meditation, and he would talk to me about his meditation that he was doing, and he'd say, look, I'm meditating right now, and we'd be out, at the grocery store or something, and I think his point was that he was being conscious of his breathing and what he was doing and saying. I think that's what he was doing anyway. And so I went to my first Bikram yoga class, actually a hot yoga, when I was 8 years old. And I barely remember that. I do remember it a little bit. I remember it being very hot, obviously. And I remember my dad telling me I can leave the room if I needed to, but I think I stayed in there the whole time, he's told me. and I drank lots of water, obviously. And I think, maybe I didn't stay up with the yoga flow or whatever, but yeah, so that was my first experience doing yoga. And then I was definitely not into it at that age. And then when I was, I think like 14 or 15, my dad and my stepmom took me to an overnight, not an overnight yoga class. It was a it was a yoga class in the middle of the night. It was from 1 year into the next year. So we went to before midnight, and then the class ended after midnight in the next year. And I thought that was pretty cool for some reason. I was still pretty young. I think, maybe I was 13. Anyway, I was pretty young, but I thought that was really interesting for some reason. It stuck out in my mind. And then I didn't really get into yoga on my own until like my late teens. I think maybe I was like 18 or 19, and I started, this was after high school when I could drive and everything, and I started going to a weekly yoga class at a yoga studio in San Diego where I grew up, and I really liked this restorative yoga class, actually. It was like a super relaxing, just like kind of lay on the floor and stretch really gently. It was on a Friday evening. I remember that because it was like end of the week, and I remember just being like, wow, this is so nourishing, And yeah, and one thing that I wanted to touch on that I kind of skipped over was I had a really hard time in high school and middle school, actually. Middle school was really challenging time. Not as hard as high school, but I had some big events that were pretty traumatic for me, compared to what other children experience. It was really not that big of a deal, the things that I went through, but they definitely had a big impact on me emotionally. And let's see, what is the most important thing to touch on here? Well, one of the instances that happened when I was in middle school was that two of my very best girlfriends, they did something really, really mean. I think it was mostly one of them, but basically what happened was they went onto my social media, my MySpace at the time, if anybody remembers MySpace, and they changed my profile picture to be a picture that I did not want anybody else to see. And they changed my About Me section on my profile to say some really mean things about myself. One of them, the first thing that it said was, "Hi, I'm Amelia, I'm a butterface." And I didn't know what that meant, and so I had to go ask actually the guy that I had a crush on, which was so embarrassing because he told me that being a butterface means everything but your face. Like your body is hot, but your face is ugly. And that really, really affected me, especially during middle school, when it's such a formative time when people are trying to figure out who they are, and you do that mostly by, when you're in school, by understanding how your peers think and feel about you. That really shapes like how you end up feeling about yourself, unfortunately, because people are so mean during that time. And so I grew up thinking that I looked bad. I didn't think that I was attractive, and also around that same time, a really dumb boy that I ended up finding out later actually had a crush on me at the time. He was saying that I had a penis, which is the most ridiculous thing, and actually now is really funny because they would say, "Neener, neener, neener, Amelia has a wiener," which was like so retarded. But anyway, it really affected me because I thought, on some level, maybe that means that they think that I look masculine or something. Like, why would they tease me for having a penis? Like, that's so dumb. But, it made me really sad. And I remember going home and crying about it and telling my mom. And my mom actually gave me some really hilarious, great advice that worked like a charm. She said, you go back to them, and when they say that again, tell them, well, at least my boner is bigger than yours. And so that's what I said, and then they stopped saying that. It was really great. But that still stuck with me, and so that combined with the things that my girlfriends had said about me, I grew up thinking that I was not attractive and that I looked like a boy. And that was really hard. And I'm mentioning this story because later on, when I went through my spiritual awakening, I did some really, really deep healing, and I ended up healing those things. And that was really great. And we'll get there in a minute. So then when I was in high school, I had a really tough time. There were a few things that happened around the same time, and some stuff with my family that I don't want to get into the details of because I don't know if it's appropriate to mention here. But a couple of the things that I can mention are that I had a boyfriend. It was my first really important boyfriend, let's say, because I had had other boyfriends before him that were just like, kind of whatever boyfriends. But this person was the first boy that I ever loved, and he loved me too. And he actually was a couple years older than me. I was a sophomore at the time, and so I was 15, yeah. And he was a senior, so he was 17, and he had never had a girlfriend before somehow. I was like, I did not understand how that was even possible, but he claimed anyway to have never had a girlfriend, and I believed him. I mean, I don't think that he did. And so anyway, I was the first girl that he'd ever kissed, apparently. And I did believe him. And we were in love, and he broke my heart because he cheated on me after we were together for like 8 or 9 months, which is a pretty long time at that age. And yeah, he cheated on me, and I just lost it. I mean, I didn't understand how that was possible. I was so confused. I really couldn't wrap my head around how that had happened, and it just obviously crushed my heart, and I was just so devastated. And I also switched schools in between sophomore and junior year of high school. So I went to a different school where I, obviously didn't really know anybody. And I had a really hard time with that transition because right in the middle of high school at that time, everybody was already set in their cliques and their groups. And like, I didn't know how to fit in, and I already felt awkward and weird. And then now I'm in a new school where I don't know anybody. And it was miserable. And I went into a very, very dark depression. And I also was smoking a lot of weed. And yeah, I've never really talked about this stuff publicly. And sorry, Mom, if you ever do listen to this, because I don't really think that she knows the extent of what I was really doing at that time. But I was like smoking bong loads before school and hanging out with people that were just, yeah, not a good influence. Obviously, we were just supporting each other's bad habits at that point. And I mean, yeah, it was bad. It got really bad. I was smoking so much weed that I was doing it in the middle of the day. During school, I would skip class to go get high. And I mean, I was trying to escape, really, which is what I found out later on. I didn't understand that that's what I was doing at the time. I thought I was just like having fun and like being a teenager, but I realized later that I was really trying to escape my emotions because I was so upset. And at one point I wanted to kill myself. I did. I felt suicidal, and I thought about it, and I never had like a plan, and I never tried to, and I was never even really into self-harm or anything, but I definitely thought about it, and because I didn't know where else to go. I mean, at that point I was just so depressed, and it felt like it was never going to end. So it felt like the only way out was to end it myself. by taking my life. But luckily, I was also sneaking out of the house every night, well, most nights, and going hanging out with dumb boys and stupid people and smoking more weed and doing dumb stuff. And anyway, my mom ended up finding out that I was sneaking out of the house, and at that point I was so far gone I didn't even care. She was so devastated and so upset, and she found out I was smoking weed at that point, and I didn't care. I didn't care that she was sad. I didn't care that she was worried. I was so hurt. And I just continued doing what I was doing, which became really dangerous because she took my phone as punishment. So then I didn't have any way of communicating if something did happen. And luckily nothing ever happened to me. I mean, I am so lucky. I really, now looking back, I feel like I was being protected by my guardian angel or my spirit team or something. Something was protecting me. I believe that because I was in some crazy situations at times when something awful could have happened, and God forbid, I mean, I came out unscathed, and that's just amazing, you know. So I really feel like something was watching over me. And so, oh yeah, so my mom finds out that I'm, you know, sneaking out of the house and smoking weed and stuff. And so her and my dad kind of teamed up to try to help me get better. And my dad took me for a while, and I stayed with him, and because my mom just couldn't handle it at one point. And then, let's see, it's kind of foggy. I'm trying to remember how everything really played out. But basically, they took me out of school because I was ditching classes so much that they were like, well, if you're not even going to stay in school, we're just going to take you out of school. And they put me into a hospital program. So I went, it was an outpatient program, so I didn't stay the night there. I just went there during the day. Like, I was going to school, but I was like in therapy, and I also had, you know, study time when we had to do homework and stuff. But the majority of the program was group therapy and individual therapy and intervention and stuff, which was at first really fucking stupid. I hated it, and I just thought, oh, this is so dumb. Like, I'm just gonna go back to doing whatever I was doing before that. And then I was there for 3 weeks, and after about 2 weeks, I couldn't smoke weed, obviously, because they were drug testing me, so I had to stay clean, and which was amazing because after 2 weeks, it took that much time for it to clear out of my system or something, and it was like my mind had been like all clouded and like foggy, and it was like this cloudy fog just kind of cleared out, and I could see clearly again. And I was like, holy shit, I have a huge problem, and I'm like sick, and I don't want to be this way. This is awful. And I decided to change. And looking back now, that was like a huge pivotal moment for me because it was like I realized, it was like the first time that I ever realized, like, I am like in control of like what I'm doing with my life, and I have been fucking up, and I don't want to do that anymore. And so I left the program after another week. I finished on a good note, and I was glad that I had been there at the end, and I decided I'm not going to smoke weed anymore. And I didn't for a while, and then I was going to group therapy after that once a week, I think, and individual one-on-one therapy for every week, I think. And they put me on antidepressants, and after about 4 months after that program, I just like felt like I knew that I was better, and I could just feel it. And I just decided to stop taking my antidepressants, which is not usually recommended, but I think I must have talked to my mom about it or something, and she told me that she thought it would be okay. And yeah, I stopped taking them, and I was totally fine. And I never needed them again. And I did start smoking weed a little bit again at that point, but something was different. Like, I just knew Okay, that was awful, and I'm never gonna get there ever again. It was like I had gone to the deep, dark depths of despair, and I knew what that felt like. And I was like, fuck that. I'm not going back there. I'm gonna stay up in this higher higher vibe place that feels a lot better. And I was fine. And I went back to my old high school that I had started at, and so I was back with my friends, and that was really good for me. And anyway, so this whole program, this whole hospital thing and the depression and everything, that was a huge part of my spiritual journey because like I said, I realized that I had control over what I was doing and my life basically, and I chose to be better. And then another so just jump way ahead to I moved to Humboldt to go to college, and let's see, yeah, so then I was in a relationship pretty much, well, right away when I moved to Humboldt. I moved out of my mom's house. I had never lived alone before, and never lived with anybody else except for my parents. And I moved straight into living with a new boyfriend that I was like a brand new boyfriend that I had met in San Diego. And then he moved up to Humboldt just before I did. And then I came up shortly after and we lived together right away. And so we were still getting to know each other. I like didn't really know this guy. And there were a lot of red flags at the beginning of our relationship, which I won't get into. But basically we were together for almost 5 years. And I wish I could say some of the details of what that situation was like for me, but I don't want to put his private information in a public place for obvious reasons. And so I'll just say that it was not a great relationship for me to be in, and I didn't realize that until afterward. But I towards the end of that relationship, I was doing yoga actually about halfway into the relationship, maybe. I started going to the gym, I think twice a week, maybe 3 times a week for yoga, and I got really into power flow. And I loved that. And that's actually how I got back in shape because at one point in that long relationship, I had gained quite a bit of weight and I wasn't comfortable in my body and I did not think that I looked attractive, and some issues were happening in my relationship. And my dad actually said to me, he said, well, maybe you need to lose some weight. And like that actually made me really mad at first, and I cried. I was so upset. I couldn't believe that he said that to me. But actually it made me like get my ass in gear and like get back in shape because I was like, fuck, maybe he's right. Like, damn it. And so, but I was like, you know what? I can do something about it. So instead of sitting there and crying about it and, woe is me, I got my ass to the gym and I started going to yoga and I felt so much better. And I ended up getting, back in shape. And then I started getting more into like the spiritual part of yoga. And oh my gosh, I forgot something really important. I got to go back for a second to community college. So before I moved to Humboldt, I went to community college in San Diego. And side note, at first, I did not even want to go to college. I was still such a rebellious teenager when I graduated high school. I was like, fuck college. I'm not going to do that. But my mom was like, please just go take anything you want. I'll pay for it. You can take art classes if you want. I was like, oh, art classes? I really loved artwork. And I was like, okay, let me check out what they have as far as artwork classes. And so I ended up going to community college and I loved it. I loved being able to take the art classes. They had really cool art classes, jewelry design, ceramics. I loved doing those things. So anyway, the one of the other classes that I took, I think in my first semester, was yoga. And I really liked the yoga class. And in the class, one of the class one of the classes, the teacher played a guided meditation at the end of the class called Yoga Nidra. And this was so powerful for me. It like changed something in me. I remember, well, first of all, if you don't know what Yoga Nidra is, I'll just quickly explain. It's basically a very, very deeply relaxing guided meditation, and there's two parts to it. The first half is called the rotation of consciousness, which is a very, very detailed body scan in which you go through every single part of your body and you relax it. And then the second half is a visualization. And the first half for me, it was like when I could feel my physical body being so relaxed, like laying there on the ground. It was like my consciousness or my soul or something had like separated from my body, and it felt like it was like expanding to like fill up the room. That's how I would describe it. It felt like my consciousness was so big and expansive, and my body was just there on the ground. It was so interesting. So that's just that was like really powerful time for me too. So okay, back to Humboldt, my long relationship, and I start going to yoga and to get back in shape. I'm going to the gym like 3 times a week, loving it, sauna, everything. And then then I had always like felt like I wanted to start doing yoga at home by myself, but whenever I tried to do it, it like wasn't the same. And I felt like I just like going to the gym. I like being in the classes. I like having the teacher telling me what to do, and I like all the other people there and the energy. And so I felt like I needed that. But then I had this one other yoga teacher that I took her class one time, and she said at the end of the class, I'm doing this 7-day home yoga challenge. If anybody wants to join, give me your email address and I'll send you videos every day. It'll be like, short, like 10, 15 minutes. And I was like, fuck, I can do that. That sounds easy. And I'm up for a challenge. And so I put my email on the list, and I did it. And I did the 7-day home yoga challenge. And that changed my life. This, I believe, was the beginning of my true spiritual awakening. Something shifted, something happened when I started taking care of myself every single morning before doing anything else. My boyfriend would still be in bed. I would wake up. It would be early, before, I don't know, around when the sun was coming up or something, and I wouldn't do anything else first. I'd go straight to do this yoga thing, and it was so easy. It was like 10 minutes. I was like, this is awesome, and I kept doing it after the 7 days, and I ended up, very, very quickly connecting with my intuition, which I realize now that's what happened. And I was just listening to my inner guidance. And my inner guidance said, well, if you're going to get up and do yoga in the morning, why don't you just start meditating a little bit too? And I was like, okay, cool. So I start adding meditation, and I remember that I had stumbled upon candle gazing meditation, and it had been intriguing to me. So I Googled candle gazing meditation, and I read a short article about how to do that, and that's what I started doing. And so every morning I would do the candle gazing meditation, and then I would do my yoga and my stretching. And the candle gazing was what I believe really, really like skyrocketed my spiritual awakening and just like burst my third eye wide open, which makes sense because that's actually what candle gazing is good for, is for clearing your pineal gland, your third eye, and getting that inner vision flowing, and that connection to the intuition. And this was so powerfully transformative for me. I think I'm going to make another video explaining candle gazing and talking about that in a little bit more detail. But basically, my life changed so rapidly and like so dramatically, like in a very short period of time, from when I started this home yoga and meditation practice. I mean, it's just like insane how quickly everything happened. But let's see, I started doing the yoga and meditation in October of 2018, and I moved out. That boyfriend and I ended up realizing that we weren't going to be together anymore, I think in November of that year. And so we decided we were going to split up, and we were just kind of going to like stay together though until, because we just had to come to a point where we realized that our relationship wasn't going to work, but we were still like good, we didn't like hate each other or anything. So nothing bad really happened that broke us up. It was just like, okay, well, we need to go separate ways. But our lives were like so enmeshed at that point. All of our stuff was all entangled. So we decided to just live together until it made sense to not live together. And in February of 2019, I had started wanting to date other people, and I was like, well, this is weird now. Like, we're still sharing a bed, and like, and so I decided it was time to move out, and I got my own apartment, one bedroom, a tiny, cute little one bedroom apartment by myself for the very first time in my life. And that was also amazing. That was like one of the most amazing times because I got to be alone, like truly alone. And it was awesome because I didn't have anybody else's shit to worry about, only my own shit, and I got to make my apartment look super nice and cute and keep it clean just how I wanted it. And that was where I did a humongous amount of very, very deep healing. That's where I intuitively got into mirror gazing with myself and doing eye gazing in the mirror with myself, which was so healing. This is where I started hula hoop dancing every morning as a part of my morning self-care routine. And this is also where I started doing hot cold shower therapy every morning also. So I had this like amazing morning self-care routine, which was like so transformative for me. So I would like roll out of bed, basically go straight to my meditation, which was my candle gazing, and some other things I would also use, like affirmations and smiling meditation and mudras, and then I would do the hoop dancing to get the blood pumping, and then I would do my yoga, and then I would take a shower, and I would do hot cold shower therapy, and then I would oil my body afterward. This was also really important for me. The oiling the body was such a nice way to connect with myself and just give myself that extra juicy love and care. And when I was in this apartment by myself, like I said, I had started to date, but that alone time, that being alone the majority of the time was so healing because I got to go inward so deeply, more than I'd ever gone before. And I really began to love myself. I realized that I had been looking to others for approval my whole life, and that I had believed these awful lies that people had told me that made me think that I was not lovable. And I was like, holy fucking shit, that stuff ain't true? That's crazy. And so I rewrote my own script and I discarded that other bullshit that was other people's, perceptions that were totally untrue and hurtful and wrong. And I said, I love myself. And that's all that matters. I love myself despite what anybody else thinks. I love myself despite whatever I've done in the past that has hurt other people or hurt myself. It's okay, because this is part of my spiritual journey. I didn't know any better at the time, but I know better now, and so it's okay. And I gave myself so much love and so much grace, and that was amazing. And I also did a lot of spiritual education. I got into a podcast called Mind Valley, which like blew my mind, and I learned so much from there. And I read some really great books during that time, and I started working on my money wound, my abundance wound, and I am still working through that abundance blockage, but we're almost there. It's been a few years. It's a big one. But yeah, so I realized that, also through this process, that I and everybody we all are the creators of our own reality. And I really began to understand what this really means. And I began to realize that, holy shit, I have created this life the way that it is now. And I can change anything, any second. I can be a different person right now. Not right now. I can be another person right now. I can do anything differently right now. And I saw things in such a different way than I had before. This was the awakening for me. This was the spiritual awakening. And I started to realize that probably every conspiracy theory that I'd ever heard about was actually true. And so I got into the conspiracy theories a little bit and really started to understand the truth of the world, really. And that was mind-blowing. And let's see what else happened. And then because I had healed on such a deep level and I found self-love and I was giving myself that love that I needed, I was being such a good partner to myself. My partner came in and damn, he hit me like a fucking train. And it was crazy because we were actually in each other's lives already. And it was like we both just needed to get on this level and like get to this frequency where we were like ready for each other. And then we just like collided at full speed and have just been glued together ever since then. It's actually a really cool story, and I think I'll save that for another episode. But but I just will say that David and I, we got together. We started dating like at the end of June in 2019, and we were engaged by the end of the summer. And then we got married before the end of the year. We got married in November. Our 4th anniversary is coming up in just a couple months. And yeah, so we got together really fast. And anyway, so because I went through my spiritual awakening and I did this deep healing, that's when my lover came. My soulmate. We're actually twin souls, which is really, really cool. Anyway, I'll talk more about that in another episode. But yeah, so that basically is my spiritual awakening story, and things are still unraveling. There's so much more I could say. I mean, I could talk for days. But yeah, I mean, I believe that we are always evolving on a spiritual journey. Like that's the journey of the soul, is a spiritual evolutionary journey, is what I believe. But the pivotal moment for me that was the actual, what I see as my spiritual awakening, was the beginning of my meditation and yoga practice at home. And then everything that unfolded so closely thereafter. And here I am, still evolving, still learning, still growing, still healing, still working through blockages, still manifesting new things and going with the flow. That's what it's all about. Divinely supported. And I'm living a spirit-led life at this point. That's what part of my spiritual awakening also was not only realizing that I can create my own reality, but that I'm not the only one creating my reality. I'm being guided by my own higher self, which is, I believe, our intuition. And maybe the intuition is actually like listening to where all of the messages are coming from. That's actually what I believe, is that the intuition is not just coming from one source. It's like, it's your higher self speaking to and through you. It's your spirit team speaking to you. It's other messages. I use my emotions a lot as a guidance, as a compass. But yeah, so yeah, I'm still here, just trucking along on this spiritual journey. I have lots more to talk about, and I'm excited to share more aspects of my spiritual awakening journey in more detail in more episodes. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Speaking of Spirituality. If you'd like to connect with me personally or book a session for Quantum Soul Alchemy, you can find me on Instagram at Ascending with Amelia. Have a beautiful day.